Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Navigating Success, Holland America Group's Oracle Cloud EPM Workforce Planning Implementation for P&O Australia. Before we begin, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. If you have technical or content-related questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A window and we will address your questions. You can expand, minimize, and move each of the window panes displayed on your screen. And don't forget to visit our additional resources available in the resource list. We encourage you to download any resources or links that you might find useful. I would now like to introduce Josie Manzano-Stetler, Argonaut's Vice President, Planning and S-Based Practice, to begin today's presentation. Josie, you may now begin.
Great. Thank you very much, Carrie. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to present this this session about Holland America's journey through planning modules, particularly in the workforce module. So just a little bit about Argonaut. So I represent the Argonaut for Oracle business, which is the EPM, I represent the EPM portion of Argonaut for Oracle. So we came about with the partnership of multiple, just like us, who are experts in implementing Oracle products. And we now offer services for the full stack through ERP, SCM, EPM, which is us, HCM, and CX, and infrastructure. So a lot of acronyms there, but basically we offer now the full stack and can help you with your Oracle needs. Next slide, please.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Wyatt. As this slide says, I'm an aspiring cruise director. Just kidding. Until that time that I get that promotion, I'm the senior manager of financial planning systems. I've been with Holland America Group for 6+ years, going on 7. A little bit about my personal voyage in the Oracle space. All the way back around the year 2000, I started with a tool called OFA, if anyone remembers that. And then I was part of a project that used a tool called Brio to do some reporting that later became interactive reporting and now basically has been sunset. Shortly after that, I began continued my journey and my voyage using planning in S-Base somewhere around year 2004. The rest of this slide really depicts me in a nutshell. Holland America Group supports Princess Cruises, Holland America Cruise Line, Seabourn Cruise Line, and P&O Australia, and a little bit more about that to come. The rest of this slide is all about like my family. My daughter attends up the road from us, and the what looks like the gentleman there with the hat and the horns. She lives in Bellingham, and that is Western Washington University. My younger son went to Montana State. We're very big soccer fans. We're season ticket holders for the Seattle Sounders FC. We're Seahawk fans, Mariner fans. A couple of us are UW alums, myself included. Go Dogs. My older son works for Fred Meyer. That's a Kroger company, and we're also Star Wars fans. So that's kind of us in a nutshell. Josie.
I am trying to advance the slide. Okay. Hi, everyone. So as Carrie had mentioned, I am the VP of Delivery of the Planning and S-Based Practice. I've been working with Steve since 2018, guiding their journey through the cloud. I'm also an architect for the solution. I architected both HA Group, or Holland America Group, and Carnival UK's EPM Cloud platforms. Though I reside in Austin, Texas right now, I'm an LA girl. I went to Southern Cal. I'm an alum. Unfortunately, I was in Seattle recently for the UW game and did not have a very good outcome there. But in any case, Steve and I were experiencing our first, our inaugural season with the Big Ten. So that's definitely, I think, a awakening experience for both of us. I'm also a big fan of LA sports. Go Dodgers.
Okay, so a little bit about Holland America Group, or the artist formerly known as. So Holland America Group, as I mentioned earlier, supports 4 different cruise brands: Princess, Holland America, Seabourn, and P&O Australia. And while I still support all those brands, we actually have broken up this group called Holland America Group, but we still exist, kind of. We just are trying to figure out what to call ourselves. So a portion of our business is also, which is also based up in Alaska, is called HAP, and that stands for Holland America and Princess. And that represents our land-based operations in Alaska. Okay, Holland America Group, or artist formerly known as, is also part of the Carnival Corporation. So a little bit about Carnival Corporation. It's based of multiple cruise brands: Holland America, Princess, Seabourn, P&O Australia, Cunard, and P&O Cruises. Those belong to what Josie referred to earlier. We call that the Carnival UK Group. And then additional groups are the traditional Carnival Cruise brand, Costa, which is based out of Italy, and AIDA, which is based out of Germany. All right, a quick audience poll. Who enjoys cruising? And I'm not sure if this is interactive or not. I'm guessing most people enjoy cruising. And then the other audience poll question is, who's using workforce planning? Or you might be attending this if you're planning on it. All right. So this next slide, my current playlist. The question is, what's your favorite cruise pre-funk walk-up music? My current playlist is I'm on a boat, and also sailing, and there's a few others, but those are that's my current playlist.
I think it's called Yacht Rock.
Yes, Yacht Rock. Thank you. All right. I'm not sure how this works, so we'll move on. Okay, a little more about Holland America Line. Holland America Line is made up of 11 ships. Here's the names of the ships. I won't name all of them. The Rotterdam is the newest ship, which set sail a couple of years ago. Holland America Line has been around for 150 plus years, has a really long history. Princess Cruises, here's all the ships, there are 16 of them. The newest one is the Sun Princess, which set sail very recently, and the Star Princess is coming here in just a few months. This, I believe, is the Sun Princess, this picture here. Very new and modern. Seabourn Cruise Line was currently my favorite, and I think Josie's too. Seabourn is made up of 6 ships. These are like a luxury brand cruise line. This picture down in the lower left-hand corner is one of the newest ships, the Pursuit. And the Pursuit and the Seabourn Venture are the Venture class ships that are very new. And they both have 2 submarines on board. So some of the things that you can do while on a Seabourn cruise, if it's one of those 2 ships, is go on a submarine ride. Very, very cool. Okay, and P&O Australia is currently 3 ships. A little bit about this particular brand. These ships are actually being folded in. They're getting rebranded as Carnival ships very soon. Okay, more about the Oracle EPM Cloud implementation at Holland America Line, Princess Cruises, P&O Australia, Hap, Alaska. All right, this slide really depicts our journey. On the left-hand side, you can see that there's a depiction of what these cloud-like structures. Basically, we have two different planning applications. One primary one called HPG Fin, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. We have a secondary one that we call Hap Fin that supports our Hap Alaska organization. They're very, very similar applications, but they do differ from a dimensionality perspective, and some use cases are quite different. So a little more about our journey at Holland America Group. What I'll call EPM 1.0, which started on-premise 11.1.2 a number of years ago. That on-premise planning system was not well architected and didn't do very well. So back in 2017, there was an assessment that then Interrel helped out with. And then the decision was made that we were going to make the journey into the cloud, into then what was called ePBCS. We purchased some licenses back in 2019, and our first go live was February of 2020, which also coincided with a little thing called COVID. And so right when that happened, we did a pretty sizable pause on our project, and then we did a restart in mid 2021. And then we completed that and went live somewhere around the early parts of 2022. So we've had a live application, two applications for the last few years. We do have two pods. For those of you who are unfamiliar with that, that means two different domains. So all told, we have basically four applications or four versions of each application. Also part of our ecosystem is narrative reporting. We have many different BSO, ASO, and hybrid cubes involved. The initial build for this was 350 or about 350 users, designed for anyway. We do an annual plan, and we do quarterly forecasting, and we do some monthly forecasting as well. But for the most part, we perform quarterly forecasts and annual plans. And originally, this was designed for Holland America, Seabourn, Princess, and Hap. So the asterisk there is the original build of this or design was not to include our P&O Australia group. More on that in a little bit. All right, in 2021, there was a bit of a milestone down with on-premise, both, I'll call it just Hyperion and Cognos. Nothing, I have no ill will towards on-premise Hyperion solutions. It just didn't go well for our organization whenever we were implementing that. And then we had another system that was just supporting one of our brands called Cognos, and that was very old, and it had been built in the early 2000s. So it was very aged. It was on very old hardware, et cetera. So these pictures depict, myself and some of my coworkers circling like the Cognos servers and destroying them. If anyone remembers PC load letter from the office. All right, so this is the home screen of our primary planning application. We use a combination of navigation cards as well as some customized navigation cards as well as some out-of-the-box ones. We do use the Redwood theme, as I think everybody has to now, which offers a little more functionality. If you notice, the background picture is one of our Seabourn ships, and I'm not for certain, but I think that might be the Ovation. And I believe that this picture is somewhere up in Alaska, and I think it might be Misty Fjords, which is near Ketchikan, Alaska. So this next screenshot shows if we click on this voyage and ports navigation card, it expands out and gives us more options. And if I click on the voyage schedule, what's going to happen here is it opens up one of our forms that is really partly or a big backbone piece of our application. What a voyage schedule is you can think of it as a sales schedule. Every row in here is depicting all the different unique voyages by ship. So there's hundreds of voyages that happen across our brands. And all of our brands use this same voyage schedule process, if you will. Additional navigation down at the bottom, you can go to different forms that are used across all of our brands. Something called a ports and positioning schedules. I won't get into all the details of those though. This is a screenshot of our secondary planning application called HAPFin. This supports our HAP Alaska ground base or organization. Okay, now to talk about P&O Australia, or you'll also hear us refer to this as the POA brand. I'm not sure why we have multiple acronyms, but we do, like many companies. So the overall goal, or one of the big goals with implementing or bringing on an additional brand into our planning application, was to utilize the existing databases, dimensions, structures of our existing planning application, and not to create any more databases or add dimensions. If you're familiar with EPM products, adding dimensions and databases, all those things can be, they can be very, very time consuming. And then, retrofitting things that have already been in place can be costly and time consuming and risky as well. Like I mentioned, we had been live for a couple of years with 3 brands already using our planning system. So really the idea here was, don't interrupt the existing flow of everything. And really the idea was retrofit as much as possible, or create net new forms where not possible, and rules and reports, etc. So some of the bigger moving parts within our application are voyage schedules, something called a positioning schedule, our port costs, our fuel costs, and workforce planning. And then so the idea was retrofit where possible. Okay, this photo is of a Holland America ship parked somewhere in Alaska. Sorry, we're gonna offer a couple of distracting photos as we go, because everybody loves cruising, right? I believe that this picture is also in Misty Fjords. This is apparently one of the most photographed areas in Alaska. All right, this is a picture of the Seabourn Venture, which is one of the newer Seabourn ships. So I believe that Josie might be depicted in this picture. She's been on this ship a couple of times, I think. So if you look way over on the left over here, there's an excursion happening outside the Seabourn Venture. More on that to come. All right, this is also a Seabourn ship. I believe this is the Ovation, which I will be on in about a month. And I think this is in warmer water, though, with all these people out there having fun in warm water.
Yeah, we weren't doing that in the last in Antarctica.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. All right, this is a picture of the Kenai Princess Wilderness Lodge. This is up in one of the 5 lodges up in Alaska. They're owned and operated by our Alaska land-based organization. All right, and just one more. This is a picture of a Princess cruise ship parked in front of the Marjorie Glacier in Glacier Bay National Park. This is one of my favorite places to go. Okay, a little more about the POA or P&O Australia workforce high-level requirements. So one of the high-level requirements for the overall project was to replace TM1. The POA brand had implemented TM1 just a few years ago, and they were relatively happy with it. So our first requirement was to replace and sunset that application. Now, regarding workforce planning, the TM1 did not have a workforce planning module, at least one that they had implemented. And they had an extensive Excel process with all of the common challenges and pitfalls of Excel. Trying to make Excel do database type stuff can always be challenging. So, and again, one of the major caveats was of our project, not to create any new databases and or dimensions, and retrofit everything where possible. All right, a little more high-level requirements about the workforce planning. So regarding workforce planning requirements, for the P&O Australia, because they're also part of Carnival, they still follow the same process that the other brands do, which is an annual plan and quarterly forecasting. So we are all pretty much aligned on process and timing because we all have the same deadlines. Now, from a workforce planning perspective, we showcase the existing solution, which was forecast by employee, not just employee, but also by job, or what we call PCN, and then by company and cost center, location, and currency. So one of those requirements aligned with our existing application, which was good. But there were a few things that didn't align, and those were around salaries, taxes, benefits, merits, etc. Those were a little different for P&O Australia. Hence, we had to do some retrofitting, or in many cases, copying existing processes, business logic, and then retrofitting for purposes of our POA brand. So the requirement was that the POA brand has about 350 FTEs and roughly 40 new hires at any one time. And again, there were some key differences between our North America brands, what we commonly refer to as our North America brands for Holland America, Princess Cruises, Seabourn. All right, some detailed requirements. So we had existing jobs and integrations, if you will, that built up and rebuilt and updated our different dimensions. So really it was to piggyback on those existing efforts, but change where necessary. So we have a job dimension and then an employee dimension. So it was just incorporate the existing or the existing jobs that were specific to the POA brand, the existing employees that were specific to the POA brand, and add them to our already existing dimensions. And then, of course, add things like security so the brands couldn't see each other's workforce planning data and or people. And then came the data, incorporating POA employee data. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. And then the customizations were really around the benefits and taxes. As you can imagine, payroll taxes that exist in the United States or North America they're a little different than in Australia. And same thing with benefits. They have like different needs, if you will. And then things like open positions and reporting, of course. All right, now a little bit about the build solution, as we've discussed the, another one. So these are pictures of a cruise that I was on back in July, and this is the Hubbard Glacier, also in Alaska. I went on a Zodiac tour right off of the boat, or the ship, which was really, really cool. There was a lot of calving activities. If you've never been to Alaska and if you've never been on an Alaska cruise, I highly recommend going to one that stops at the Hubbard Glacier. It's absolutely gorgeous. On the right-hand side, that was a recently turned small iceberg, which was really, really cool.
That must have caused a big wave.
that was a relatively small iceberg.
Ah, gotcha. All right. Okay, so I'm going to talk about just a really high level of the POA workforce solution. So this is a little cutout of the HPG Fin pod, which pretty much covers all of the planning for the cruise business of Holland America Group. So that also includes the North America brands, Seabourn, Princess, and Holland America Cruise Line. So for workforce, we, based on the requirements, we chose to implement the workforce module. Their requirements pretty much lined up such that it was a very good choice for them, and also helped in terms of the facilitating the implementation experience. Along with that, we also built an ASO reporting cube to support specifically the workforce reporting. So like headcount and anything that they wanted to do against the workforce dimensionality, any kind of reporting that they wanted to do against the workforce cube dimensionality, that was serviced here. Another purpose for this cube was that it was used to actually map the data back to the financials cube. And it's because we needed additional properties that were captured in the union code dimension in order to properly group the forecast values to the respective accounts in financials. And then it's also connected to the main reporting cube, which housed the majority of Holland America Group's financial and management reporting.
I'll point out one additional thing. The upper left-hand side is really the sources of our solution, and we use Oracle HCM as our HCM or our HRIS system, and that is actually used across almost all brands. And so we have some specific extracts that are built around our dimensionality that come from HCM, and that solution was used for this project as well. Okay, high-level process. This is probably pretty similar across most organizations. From a process perspective for workforce planning, we enter some high-level assumptions that then cascade down all the way down to the employee and job level. So we have things like hours per day, hours per week, working days, merit rates, a lot of default rates. As I mentioned on the previous slide, our HCM system creates some extracts. We actually use CSV files, two for metadata and one for what we call employee properties, which has data, things like salary and hire date and things like that in it. And then we load all three of these files, not at the same time, obviously. And then we do some review of post-load to make sure that things are calculating and that all of the drivers make sense, that at the end of the day that basically salaries and payroll taxes and things like that are calculated for every single employee. There's also, we load new hire requisitions and do that for every forecast and every plan that we do. That same process is being used for this POA solution. And then we review total compensation, which is a combination of all your salaries and taxes and benefits, et cetera. And then, as Josie mentioned, then we have a separate process that transfers this data to our financials database. And then there's a review and a series of reviews that happen in financials. Some other out-of-the-box processes that are used are terminations, leave of absence, and also transfers. So transferring an employee from one intersection to another. And that happens all the time. I think it happened 20 times just yesterday. All right, this is another version of the same solution diagram. I think that we've covered everything here, so I'm just going to move on. I think maybe we went backwards. Okay, here we go. Navigation. So we're still using the exact same navigation that existed for the application before we embarked upon this particular project. So again, we use vertical and horizontal forms. We use navigation and some process, to help out with process flow. And of course, forms can be rendered also not just in the web but also in SmartView. I think most of our users end up using SmartView at the end of the day, but especially from an onboarding perspective, and when we're first bringing users on, we start them in the web, until they get used to using SmartView. All right, a little bit more about the solution. There's a couple of screenshots here, and this is really showcasing a lot of the assumptions that are used that are kind of the backbone for workforce planning, like hours per day, hours per week, and work days per period. And this is key because the Australians have a different hours per week that they are going. An assumption is that 38 is full time for them as opposed to 40. I never really asked why, but it's just one of the key things that set them apart from the North America brands. So this is also showcasing some of the merit rates and things like that that are cascaded down to all by employee. Taxes and benefits, as I mentioned a little bit before, this solution had to conform to specifics about Australia and some New Zealand employees as well. So they had something called superannuation, for example, which is I took a screenshot of something from the internet. That's an Australian employer-sponsored retirement account. So we had to add that and that's totally different from our North America employee group. All right, from an integrations perspective, I've already mentioned a couple different times as far as metadata and data. Here's a couple of screenshots of this process. We take files that we get from our HCM solution, we place them in a very specific folder location on a server that's really just meant for ingesting data into EPM. So this is a server that is local behind our firewall, etc. And then those files are then uploaded into the cloud and then used by different integrations. So there's a couple of the bottom two screenshots are a couple of integrations themselves and some of the properties around these integrations. This solution is using what's called the EPM agent inbox, which was new to our group at the time. So this was about a year ago whenever all of this went live now. So we've replicated that solution over and over and over again, which is also really cool. All right, Groovy REST rules. So this solution, a lot of this solution for workforce planning for POA, as you might imagine, our team that supports these environments are based in North America, but Australia is not. And there's a large time difference there. And so the idea was, let's create a bunch of rules and processes that can be executed by people in Australia, boots on the ground in Australia, and we can think of them as super users in order to process their own workforce processes. So for example, they had this ability to execute business rules that then executed all the integrations. This was new to our ecosystem, which was very cool. And this allowed some of these super users to really be self-sufficient and not require myself and my team to be up in the middle of the night to support them. I won't say it was absolutely perfect, but it worked quite well. And we've reused this multiple times over, many forecasts and 2 annual plans later. Still going strong.
Yay. And also, so I'd like to point out, it also prevented them from issuing service admin rights, beyond their group.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that would have been hard to train up people, to become administrators from scratch. And that definitely was not in the cards. That was not part of the overall goal as well.
So before you go on, Steve, we're hearing that slides are freezing. So if this is happening to you, you might want to refresh your browser. That might help. Okay, back to you, Steve.
Okay. For open positions, this is a process that there is some out-of-the-box functionality within workforce planning where you can add open positions. But what the requirement was we need to be able to update our open positions in mass. So I mentioned many slides ago that there's roughly 40 new hires at any one given time, but that changes every cycle, every forecast, because you hire some of the people and then you still have open positions and or net new ones. So the solution here was to create a flex form. And there's a star on here called Flexi Form, and that was because the team there, it was all of these naming conventions were new to them, but they called it Flexi Form, so this kind of stuck. So the Flex Form allows them to submit in SmartView for open positions, and then we add business rules that run on save. This one called incremental process details with synchronized defaults. So that's runs on save whenever they submit, and is quite nice. And we've retrofitted this process for our North America brands as well. So there's another win from this project. All right, reviewing loaded data. So this is like post-processing. You can do this from the web and or SmartView. We've also enhanced this a little bit by creating some reports after the fact. But this is just a couple screenshots of the process of reviewing loaded data. And then once everyone is okay with it, then we would be pushing the results onto our financials databases. All right, data movement. So once our data has been reviewed on the workforce planning side, and specifically comparing workforce planning to an ASO reporting database for workforce planning, then we have a process that pushes this data over to financials, which also includes an FX rule. So in the past, in years past, this was a solution that our administrators would have to perform. And as part of this solution, again, we wanted people to be self-sufficient. So we created a Groovy rule that performs all of these steps. And that Groovy rule then, it was given to these workforce super users who could then execute this process. So I call this wicked cool because I think this is wicked cool. This is definitely a nice evolution within EPM. All right, some lessons learned. If you're using whatever your source system is, in our case, it was HCM, it's to find a friend and be really nice to them, because you have to work with them quite a lot in order to get your extracts to be perfect. And there's always interesting data in different disparate systems. Again, our use of Groovy rules to automate, what would normally be admin-centric processes, which again, we've also replicated these learnings and replicated some of these across our different North America brands. Looking forward, we're going to take some of this and also replicate in our HAP Alaska application, because it's separate, and although it still follows the same like workforce planning processes. And data in your sources doesn't always align to exactly your dimensionality. So your mappings and your cleanup kind of can spawn other projects. Workforce planning out of the box doesn't completely capture and calculate people movement. So if I move from one intersection to another, if I'm just bringing in data from our HCM system, anyway, that's a lesson learned, and it just means that you have to be aware of your incoming things and what gets calculated. So data integration security, we were hoping that from an integrations perspective, that our users would be able to see everything that we wanted them to see. This was a little tricky, so we had to do some workarounds to this solution. Pitfalls of REST API rules. So although REST API rules are really, really cool, you can get some false negatives, at least from the job console perspective. So sometimes they can show up as the word canceled, and that concerns people. And some people get more concerned than others whenever they see things like canceled. And there's a couple of other pieces here. This was a successful project. It was on time, on budget. Our go live was just about a year ago. Our implementation partner, Argono, who we're presenting with, also wicked cool.
So the one thing I'd like to, before you go on, Steve, sorry. So the one thing that I'd like to, highlight was the POA implementation for workforce. Kind of think of it, we appended that on top of an existing workforce solution for their other brands, which was implemented a couple years prior. So the workforce module is scalable. And even though that they're on the EPPCS SKU right now, it's still scalable, to accommodate the differences in the benefits and taxes that are in Australia versus the US, and even within the brands themselves. So I think that's something, an important thing to kind of remember about the workforce module, that it can, accommodate for those, differences within your divisions. Go ahead, Steve, sorry.
Agreed. No problem. Thank you. So this is one of our last slides. This is what's next for us. More narrative reporting. We really are still scratching the surface of that tool. More reporting in general. This has really been something that we've been working on a lot lately, was adding more reporting and attaching reporting and to processes. We do something called constant currency. We need to expand on that. More and more Groovy rules. Almost every day we're dealing with something that has to do with, any enhancement that we're doing. Almost all of them are now Groovy rules. We're adding reporting onto that, Groovy rules that kick off a report process. We have not touched pipeline. That's something else that we need to, that's relatively new functionality. Task manager, we have a lot of task lists. So that's some of the legacy task lists. We want to sunset that eventually and start using task manager. And then more and more operational data, tap into data warehouses or different sources for bringing in additional data that always just enhances reporting. All right, Josie.
All right. Okay, so you just heard number 3, session 3 of our EPM webinar series. There's basically, we have a collection of 8. I actually come back in a few weeks and talk about narrative reporting notes. So if you're interested in that, definitely tune in. Same day, same channel. But definitely you'll get a lot of learning from the upcoming sessions. So hopefully you'll join us in those sessions as well.
I'll be there.
Awesome. And also, just to mention this, just another plug here. We offer a service called the EPM Cloud Readiness Assessment. And it is, especially if you're on premise right now and thinking about moving to the cloud, this is definitely a good service to help you evaluate, what that move is going to look like, what kind of changes we need to make to prepare you for that migration to the cloud. We'll also include, basically strategies of how that movement's going to look like, whether it be a lift and shift or a move and improve or complete redesign, it all will help you evaluate what those needs are and what that roadmap looks like. Okay. And now we are ready for questions. Bring it on.
Thank you, Josie. Thank you, Josie. I would now like to open it up for Q&A. As a reminder, you can ask a question by submitting them in the Q&A engagement tool located at the bottom of your screen. And while we're waiting for questions to queue up, we did get one while you were speaking. Josie, I know you also addressed it directly, but go ahead and ask it on the call. Is the Financials Cube a custom app or the Financials module?
Right, yeah. So what was implemented was the Financials module. So we also implemented that as part of the solution.
Give it another few minutes.
Any other cruises that you're that you're preparing for, Steve?
I am going to be going on a Caribbean cruise just next month on a seaborne cruise.
Very jealous.
Can't wait. Yes, I cannot wait. Just in time for freezing weather here.
There you go.
There are no questions at this time.
No questions. Oh, wait, something just popped up.
We just got one. So, ask and you shall receive. During the initial phase, was there some thought about creating a custom app, or you knew from the beginning that the workforce module could handle all the requirements?
Good question.
So, yeah. So, so I guess I'll go first, and then, Steve, you can go ahead and supplement to that. But, during the implementation, what as part of our methodology is the requirements, the requirements of design. And, we make sure that we capture, all the requirements, all the expectations that Holland America had for their workforce planning. Those requirements are weighed against, the offerings of the workforce module. So, we do take a look at that. We have had instances where the requirements don't fit and we have to go with the custom map. But in this case, we thought that, it looked like that, the requirements was a really good fit. Steve, you want to add to that?
I guess what I'll add there is at the initial phase of our project was an ideation phase, and which also like the culmination of gathering all the requirements was also to do a prototype. And that prototype was essentially to prove that the modules that we decided to use, which was financials and workforce, would work. And we proved that, I guess you could say, because during that particular phase, we actually did load that employee module or workforce module with existing employee data sets. So, it was a good test to make sure that that everything that we expected was, the results were what we expected.
Right. That's a good point, Steve. So yeah, we do a proof of concept for them, so during the design, to ensure that, that our decision to go this way is a good decision. So we did do a proof of concept, prior to proceeding with a build. Any other questions?
Thanks for those questions, though. Those were good.
Definitely.
I'm not seeing any additional questions at this time.
Okay. All right, so are we good to wrap up for today?
I think so.
We are. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Steve, for presenting your implementation to us.
You bet.
Yes, thank you everyone for your time today, and we hope you join us for future events. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.